This exhibition represents the first contemporary museum presentation of the life and work of photographer KD Ganaway since the 1930s. Born and raised in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Ganaway was the son of parents enslaved on plantations owned by the city's founder. Completely self-taught, Ganaway became a prominent photographer during his time. He moved to Chicago where he worked as a butler for 18 years, using his one day off every 2 weeks to perfect his craft. His photograph, The Spirit of Transportation, won first place in the 1921 Wanamaker Photographic Salon, beating out renowned photographers Edward Weston, Man Ray, and Paul Strand. After that breakthrough photograph, his prints of Chicago's landscapes and industry were widely circulated, appearing in magazines such as National Geographic. Ganaway considered himself a race photographer, capturing images of African Americans rising to political and cultural prominence, as well as those who were marginalized in Southside Chicago's Bronzeville district. Ganaway is now recognized as one of the first Black photographers of renown in the United States, but his story was buried for a long time. Since 1990, the California Museum of Photography has owned a print of The Spirit of Transportation, donated by singer-songwriter Graham Nash. But it is through the extensive research of Ganaway's descendants, Tim and Brenda Fredericks and Daryl Webb, that we can share his story.
My name is Walter Fredericks. I go by Tim. I'm the great-grandson of King Daniel Ganaway. I was newly married and went to my brother's house when he returned from overseas. He was a Marine, and we were sharing a family album that he had. And my wife, after noticing time after time, she said, "Who's this Black woman who keeps showing up in these photos?" And we were all surprised to hear that. And I started doing research on Ancestry.com, and I found, finally one night, like 2 a.m, I found a census form that had just enough information, because I knew just enough information. I knew the last name Ganaway, I knew my great-grandmother was an immigrant from Sweden, and I knew my grandmother's name, Lucille. And I found all those on a census form, 1920 in Chicago, with Lucille listed as Black, my grandmother.
My name is Daryl Webb. I am the great nephew of King Daniel Ganaway. How I discovered King Daniel Ganaway. So 2015, I attended a museum exhibit put on by Tim and Brenda Fredericks. They were giving the presentation, and during it, I heard a lot of information about my family, information that had only been really told to me by my mom. So I kind of wondered why it was that these people that I did not know at the time knew so much about us. At the end of the presentation, I met them and also met Tim's brother. So it turned out that Tim and I were cousins through King Daniel.
So you're saying it's Psy, right?
Right.
Right. Who do you think is Patsy? Who we think is Patsy? Or not Patsy?
I don't think she's in here.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm thinking that's maybe his sister right there.
Oh, right.
So Daniel, Sai, King, and King Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
Discovering King Daniel Ganaway, how has it affected my life? So first I would say tremendously. The first, understanding that you have kinship with people that you didn't know you had kinship with. That's, again, mind-boggling. There are many people in American history whose work, energy and efforts have been buried through several different kind of reasons, circumstances. And in this particular case, because of race, he was buried. What I'm more thankful for is that he's elevated, but because he's being elevated, that others like him can be elevated, but then also it brings additional legacy, if you will, to our own family's ancestry.
For me personally, it's increased my faith in God, brought me closer to Him, because I got an intimate look at how the hand of God moved through history in a family's life. And for most African Americans in this country, they will never have the in-depth documentation to look at in their family history. And so what I've learned is that in history, you see how people move through time and space, the decisions that they make, how they affect the future generations. And you see how generous and loving God is to sustain us through all kind of difficulties. So for me, personally, that increased my faith in God. What I learned about the world that King Daniel lived in was that it was just as complex as our world today. He had immense opportunity, yet he was still a black man faced with the typical realities of racism and discrimination. That's still true today. We have more opportunities, but we're still faced with obstacles that have to do with race and the color of our skin, and that's unfortunate.
What did his photography reveal about the world that he lived in? Almost 100 years ago now, we'll say about 80 to 100 years ago. Not much has changed. But one thing you see with his photographs, and this would be true with all of us probably, and that is he navigated the spaces that he was given, and that's the spaces that he captured. What is the pictures that we can find of his? What does it tell me? It just kind of gives us a glimpse into the environment that he was in. And if we were to go back and kind of trace his footsteps, we would see that probably those environments haven't changed much today. And so, time travel can be interesting, but in a span of 100 years, I don't think much has changed from his day to this day.
What do I envision for the future? I'm just, at this point right now, I'm so happy with this exhibition. It's like the culmination of many years of work so far, but like I said yesterday, as we were discussing this, I don't feel like this is the end. What's coming? I don't really know, but I never anticipated this. This is way beyond what I ever anticipated ever coming out of this, and so it's very gratifying. We feel like we helped rescue someone almost lost to history because there was very little information about King Ganaway on the internet in 2002, very little. So very gratifying. What it's like to see the recognition of his work, what you all have done here is, I can't describe.
What has it been like for me to see King Daniel's work gain recognition again? This event here is monumental. I could not have imagined that I would be here today to celebrate his work being exhibited. It was hard for him during his time to probably exhibit, but he did exhibit during his time. Probably should have exhibited more, being the type of photographer he was. I am glad to be here today to represent him in what he was trying to do during the time that he was living. So this is just another, really another domino to fall, I guess I would say, in what he was trying to accomplish. So what we get the opportunity to do is really bring his work forward into 2023. The next step for what this exhibit can do and what it might bring, I would hope that being the premier, not just the premier African-American photographer of his day, but probably the top photographer of his day, that this exhibit would, number one, inspire other young photographers to embark on pioneering photographic work. Secondly, I hope one day that a space is named after King Daniel Ganaway. I hope that one day to see his name given that type of recognition.
What is it like for me to see this recognition of KD Ganaway? Oh my gosh. I never imagined that when my husband woke me up in the middle of the night and told me he was a Black man and who his great-grandfather was, I never imagined that I would be sitting in this chair today. But today, he's in this museum. So, that's priceless. What I hope will be the result of this exhibit and the highlight of Ganaway's work is that, number one, more people in this country, doesn't matter what nationality you are, I'm hoping that people will find their American story and beyond that. I hope that people will be more curious about themselves and look into their family history, because everyone here, the generations before, our families contributed to building this country in some way. And so we're here. We survived. And I think that's a testament to the grace of God. I think that if more families and more museums helped families tell their stories, it would make our relationship better.